All right, MA Marignon, turn 51, and we have our second to last storm of a Bandar fort this turn. Otherwise, I think, going to be a relatively quiet one, although here comes a dire portent. Ariu casting something, which does not have a description, so we'll have to take a look at what that is. Nothing good, though. We bring in some summons, our patrollers, our air magic. We finish Construction 7, which we've talked about, teleporting guys out in preparation for the war. We're getting some undead scouts, mostly to go underwater to try to get a little more information. We cast Transmute Fire, so 2,016 gold for the 36 gems, one gem being used up in the spell itself. And yeah, I mean, I still don't really know how to balance this, but I can definitely find use for 2,000 gold. And at minimum, if we choose to, at least until we lose Eternal Pyre, which of course will never happen, we can maintain our, fire stocks as long as we're not doing anything else with them. And, we want to make lanterns and this, that, and the other. But, still, we could maintain our fire stock and get 2,000 gold every turn for the rest of the game. I don't know. That's definitely nice if you can spend gold, and Marignon can spend gold. On the not so nice front, another dire portent. Okay, so this is Riches from Beneath, which is another. I should probably cast it at some point just so I can get a better handle on how good it is, but I know a lot of people feel it's not really worth it. Then again, I've heard other people swear by it. It does seem to be one that's more situational. I do think that Ulm is someone that it will probably benefit from it more. So that is probably a good cast for them. And then there was a battle in Xibalba. It kind of looks like Xibalba's, choosing to ride out again. Man. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is another reason to jump in. And this is a ton of blood slaves. They've brought all the blood slaves. And, you know how I feel about, spending gems and that kind of business. I completely approve of that. And yeah, wow, here come the battlefield wides. So we have Howl coming from an Animus. So that could be either side. But I do think that's from Xibalba. From what I've seen, let's turn on team colored squares so we can see what color the wolves come in as. But Falegra doesn't really seem to be, casting too many battlefield wide spells in general. And then we have Rigor Mortis. That's also definitely coming from Xibalba. And then Grip of Winter also coming from Xibalba. So a double fatigue play from Xibalba. And then, just some garbage out in front, and I imagine there's going to be quite a bit of skeleton summoning, which, pairs well with fatigue plays. And Falegra doesn't really have much here, right? He just has these foul spawn, which they're acceptable siege chaff, right? That's what they're here for, and yeah, that makes sense. He cracked the fort, so they're doing what he wanted. But in combat, they're really going to be more of a liability than anything else. And then in terms of actual killing power, pretty much just two thugs, probably pretty scary thugs. Actually not that heavy on the kit, but I think regardless of the kit, right, the encumbrance on these guys, the base encumbrance is decently high, and you can see their fatigue is already really high, and it's going to be a huge, it's already going to be a really tall order for them to cut through all of the skeleton chaff. The fire shield does really help with that, so that's a really good call. But still, I think it's just going to be way too much stuff, even without the fatigue plays, probably, because I don't think there's any way. Let's just double check. So this guy, he probably summoned Earth Power. He does have some reinvigoration, but he's still not fatigue neutral. So he's not fatigue neutral. He's getting hit by a fatigue play, and he has all the skeletons to cut through. He has a couple bodyguard friends who going to suffer from basically all the same issues. And this guy, has already routed. It looks like, no, he doesn't have an affliction. He just has terrible, he's 15 morale. Maybe he must have got hit with some kind of morale spell. They also don't love the dark, right? This guy's routing as well, but still, wow, he's getting right, because Quagmire also gives you a slight malice to your skills. So he's in the dark and he's in a swamp now. And he doesn't like either of those things. And then the White Mage, this is looking kind of like a HP route, I imagine, somewhere up here. Armies of, I think I saw armies. It looked like a bit of Phoenix Pyre, but Phoenix Pyre is not going to work so great against a fatigue play, right? Because if you're fatigued out, then you die and you don't come back. So the sub for Xibalba, I think, is doing really well. Has really, I wouldn't say turned this war around yet, but it was looking like Xibalba was just going to be defeated and completely eaten a few turns ago, and now I actually do think that they have the opportunity to potentially raid out and push Falegra back in general. Falegra is large enough; they probably have enough other forces that there's no way that Xibalba is going to fight their way out of this. But if we're fast enough, we might actually be able to provide enough support that we'll have an ally. Now, whether or not we want that ally is another question, because Xibalba was one of the spoils I was planning on picking up. So we may end up, being the person to deliver the final blow. Like, we'll see. I probably won't reach out since there's a good chance, we'll have to fight them. But like, still really impressed, with how they've been able to turn this around, doing cool stuff with limited resources. And that said, like, they do lose, some of their chaff, but they don't lose any of their casters, right? And that's the really important thing. And then Flegra loses 2 of their Titans, which is a big deal. These guys, I'm pretty sure cap only, definitely slow to recruit, definitely really expensive. They were carrying some gear, not fully geared. The white mage does escape, and then the chaff, like, especially the foul spawn, not such a big deal. And in fact, actually, I think the foul spawn are mercenaries. Yeah, so in fact, and these wet ones are mercenaries as well. So, Flegra doing a good job of like not committing too much, right? So when they lose stuff, it's like, the mercenaries, no big deal. But this does slow things down, and it means that, for like, say, if you're next door to a vulture like myself, then they might decide to come in. So time is a resource as well. And then, we've got our storm. Hopefully this is going to go better. Yeah, it better go better because there's nothing in here, basically. So let's just see if we lose anything. And we do manage to lose a few things, but just a couple swordsmen, some halberdiers, like some of our infantry, basically. So that works out for us just fine. And then also, again, speaking of storms, it's been that sort of turn. Here's Asphodel storming Fascia, also probably empty. Yeah, more or less, like 1 or 2 casters in there who are not going to be relevant against this juggernaut. But we are a little more interested in what Asphodel is rocking, since it's looking like, they're going to be one of the late game challenges. And they have a ton of these mannequins, which we've talked about, before. They're kind of like undead chaff, but they put you to sleep. I don't know who this guy is. Okay, interesting. Looks like he gets Minotaur mannequins as well, which I think, a lot of the same stuff, just like more hit points. No protection really on these guys, but, with the army-wide protection buffs that will be coming online, no doubt, shortly for Asphodel, I think that will be less of a problem in a few turns. And then, just using some of his regular centaur, which we have seen has been a bit difficult to combine that with foul vapors. And they're not going to love this cave. They're not going to love the darkness. And then, he's got a bunch of these. Man, always managed to get the profit. So anyways, he's got a lot of his cap onlys. We'll take a look at them. But this guy definitely is worth looking at. And this is looking like probably charm spam, right? Because he's been giving him quite a bit of penetration gear. And like, that's really dangerous, especially because it's a fairly, 24 protection, a lot of hit points, decent stats. So this guy's probably going to be on advance and cast spells. And he's not going to die, and he's going to, take over a decent number of units, or like sending super combatants or thugs into this army would be super dangerous. Like, in addition to maybe losing it, maybe you just give the thug to Asphodel. So, that is an interesting find. And then otherwise, no gear on his cap mages, but they do have plenty of gems, I'm guessing for bugs and maybe a foul vapors play. But not a ton of mages, but again, this player seems pretty good at judging, the correct amount of stuff to bring. Whereas I feel for myself, as still a somewhat newer player, I have a tendency, I also just think it's in my nature, to overcommit, which, definitely has its problems. Oh, and it looks like he's doing a little bit of transformation as well, because this is not a normal bear. This is a bear with a lot of magic paths. Really high magic resistance, too, for a bear. So that's interesting, because usually one of the issues with transformation is a lot of the chassis you get have really low magic resistance. And this is probably the foul vapors. But I don't think gem usage is going to get triggered here, and I don't think this is worth watching. But this is an army that we need to think about, definitely. So let's see. They probably lose a mannequin or 2. Totally acceptable. That is even, that's free. Our infantry is not, so that is even less of a loss for them than for us. We have an unexpected event in our capital. Lose 20 province income. That really hurts. That misfortune 3 at play, I suspect. But still, we're getting a good amount of gold from other sources. Wow, this is super lucky. So right? And then here's a reason that well, don't worry about misfortunes. So we get a Shadow Seer, which is really cool. I think they're an Astral 3 mage, a really powerful Astral mage. Now, we can recruit Astral 3s sometimes, so it's not quite as exciting, but still, they're really, I think they're ethereal as well, just built in. They're really cool mages. So we will not say no to that, and it's definitely better than losing, 20 province income somewhere. And then let's see, Yis gets attacked by Independence. Excellent. And it's just a couple of dogs. I think they can probably handle that. Wow. It's a lot of province defense. A lot of province defense. So, it does seem to indicate probably that they're at war with Pelagia and worried about raiding, or maybe it's left over from one of their earlier wars. And then, of course, like the one guy we left behind on Bandar can't actually crack it. And yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right. This is the situation and what we're doing about it. I think we are going to attack Falegra. So we'll see. It could change. There is a little bit of concern. Asphodel, has basically finished off Fascia. They were already in a pretty weak position, right? We were thinking about maybe going after Fascia as well. And, for Asphodel right now, the war is over, and so, okay, what are they going to do next? And they have a giant stack that's right next to me in an area that we have just recently conquered, right? I haven't even completely conquered it. So, I think there's definitely an argument to be made for Asphodel attacking us. On the other hand, Asphodel does have smaller and weaker neighbors. I think Shiniyama is probably smaller than us, although not a lot smaller than us. And then Falegra, of course, is another option for them. They also have Ulm over here, who I believe they border. And actually, like Ulm, I wouldn't say that they're busy with Menchaca. This war with Menchaca we mostly missed, because we can see that, Menchaca's capital has been taken by Ulm, so it looks like Eriu is just vulturing this throne, which might trigger hostilities between these two, which would actually, work out for me. Not that I'm worried about Eriu attacking us. They also have plenty of opportunities, I think. I think, Vanheim is a somewhat attractive target. Although I wonder, Man might be moving in on them soon. But anyway, yeah, they have, the possibility for Vanheim, Ulm, as well as Agartha, right, who has been struggling a bit with Jotunheim. So I think, Eriu is going to be somewhat occupied. And then Asphodel might not be, but we're probably not the most attractive target. And then, talked about how I confirmed the sub. Haven't actually talked with this player yet about previous relations, but I'm just going to go ahead and gateway anyway. So we're gatewaying, and I'll chat with them. Worst case scenario, we have to gateway back, or, maybe gateway this army over. So, we'll figure it out. You can see that I definitely was able to spend all that extra gold, no problem. And, some of that is going into troop recruitment, and now we're getting these halberdier guys because they can hold up the walls a little better. Since we've decided that we're going to try to hold, over here for now, and we're going to go after Falegra. And, I've talked to death about, why we're going after Falegra, and, I'm hoping it's going to be a good war for us. So the reason, I think I said 4 turns. If I didn't say 4 turns is the plan, because we're going to go ahead, some of that extra money went into a palisade on here, right? This is where our Garnet Amazons are. Sadly, we can't actually recruit. I should have actually, this turn's rolled, so I can't change it. So anyway, we do want a fort here, mostly for the mages, and it's going to take 4 months. So, why not? It also happily takes about 4 months to slow walk this raiding group. So we moved it down to just 6 knights. I think this should be able to take out, most PD. It's still pretty heavy investment. These knights are actually, you can't see it here, but 50 gold a piece. So this is actually a pretty expensive raiding group, right? This is not a cheap raiding group. On 9 is even more expensive. So anyway, this guy's going to go 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th will be an attack. We'll try to be not super obvious about this, but we're going to be fairly obvious the turn beforehand. We might try to do some fire elemental raiding, and I am trying to cut down on the gem spending for the raiding. But the nice thing is that if we attack with a bunch of witch hunters, it just doesn't really look as threatening, right? If there's 3 or 4 witch hunters in this province, they can actually fire elemental raid and probably take all of, maybe not the throne. No, we don't actually have a scout here, but I imagine there's probably a good amount of province defense, and Falegra definitely has been patrolling some of their forts. So we probably can't just slam a witch hunter, into a province like this. But against most sane levels of province defense, the witch hunters, along with the fire elemental, can probably take it. And it's going to kind of look just like we're site searching versus, if we move a stack of troops right here onto the border and a stack of troops here and, a stack of troops here, Falegra is going to have a pretty good idea in all likelihood, what we're up to. So we might open the war with some witch hunter raiding with fire elementals, and then follow up with our main armies, and then maybe split out some knight groups. So yeah, 4 turns from now we should be attacking Falegra, barring we'll see. I think the Pelagia situation, we'll see. He says that there's an Atlantis army marching at him now, and that he's going to be launching his attacks this turn or next turn, but we'll be launching his attacks soon, I guess, against Yis. I actually thought he was already at war with Yis, but I guess that was not the case. Not really 100% sure. We do have an underwater scout moving out, so hopefully we'll get a better look at what's going on. We will probably also try to direct our scrying into the water from time to time because, yeah, like while I am really hesitant to get involved in this war, we also kind of don't, if Pelagia collapses, especially if Pelagia collapses and we take Phlegra, we're kind of Yis's next target anyway. So, I don't know. We'll see. Possibly launching this war with Phlegra is foolish, but I do think that other than Abyssia, they're probably our weakest neighbor just in terms of like raw strength. And I'm much more afraid of the player that's, playing Abyssia versus the player that's playing Phlegra. So we'll see. I could be wrong about that. And of course, too, that could backfire because I'm giving this player time to dig in as Abyssia. So anyway, sorry. We've talked about all this. We're going for Phlegra. Could be a mistake. Otherwise, the Bandar War is not quite finished yet. So there's no lab here. I don't know whether he destroyed it or it got destroyed in an event. But yeah, we'll have to rebuild a lab and probably a temple here as well. I don't know. We might forego the temple here and just get the initiates, and then maybe we'll just get witch hunters from Bandar Log. So anyway, our army is in motion. We're not going to leave anybody behind. We don't really actually have a ton of spare mages in this army. We've kind of cut down on it a lot. So once we take Bandar Log, we'll send somebody back out to build the lab and hang out, and then we're going to move our kind of large raiding group back on top now that they've reloaded with gems. And so if there's a breakout attempt, hopefully they should be able to stop that. And then next turn, our army will be able to jump on top. We're also bringing our eagles over. We were able to put them on one of our air summons here, so she can fly the eagles around really quickly now. Because if you don't have a flying commander, then you don't get the benefits, the mobility benefits of the great eagles. So the great eagles should be able to jump on top of the fort at the same time as our main army, and I'm pretty sure we'll get the one-turn crack. At least with our army. Obviously, we have been sitting on Bandar for a little bit, but just in a raiding capacity. We're going to get rid of the Trogs. Very happy about that. That should go fine. We're bringing way too much stuff there, but that's okay. This stuff is going to probably hang out in Marignon to maybe deal with Abyssia if, Tianchi decides to come out. We may need it against Asphodel, so I think, having a good chunk of knights at home is not the worst thing right now. Otherwise, mostly site searching. I think we're doing another double round of paladins. We might actually go another round of paladins up here. I don't know. We'll see. We do need a bit more gear for them, I think. Right now they're just the Great Swords of Sharpness, which is probably enough. With this guy's got his strength boosted. It's just an extra piece that we had left. But we might add that into the rest of the kit because 31 damage is a lot, but those tyrants are pretty nasty. This will go up because we have some strength on the bless. But yeah, we are going to need some help cutting through, some of those super combatants, especially the Bronze Colossus. We're actually bringing in some Terracotta Soldiers, and this is pretty much just for their magic being tag. One of the issues with these ladies is they are magic beings, and there's some spells that specifically target magic beings, and currently they are the only magic beings in our army, right? Whatsoever. So I do think it's always important to have some chaff that, shares the same tags as your more valuable stuff. So, if you have really valuable undead, make sure you have undead that you don't care about that are in your army. So same thoughts here. Also, Terracotta Soldiers, I think they're fine. They're perfectly serviceable chaff, and the fact that they're resistant to fire is very relevant because we do a lot of fire stuff at Marignon. And then our Pretender this turn is actually going to take a break from making us money with fire gems, although I think I'm going to be doing quite a bit of that. I am a little bit concerned that I'm going to get addicted to this gold, both just in terms of what I want to do with my play, but we can definitely raise our upkeep to a point where it's we kind of have to put those fire gems into gold, and I would prefer not to end up there, especially because it crossed my mind that probably the correct use of Eternal Pyre and all these fire gems in this situation, right, where we're so worried about Asphodel, in the long run, is we should just be banking fire gems to cast Purgatory, which will just damage any undead that are within your dominion. And especially, right, we have the Throne of Bureaucracy, which is going to help, push our dominion. Also, like Marignon is pretty good at dominion control in general, and we have stealthy preachers. Speaking of the stealthy preachers, actually, some of where that extra gold is going, we're finally building an unforted temple. I think this might be my first one that I've ever built in multiplayer. We may even build a second one. We'll see. Because, we want some more friars just as gem carriers and scouts, and, we've talked about those guys. But another thing they could do for us, right, is stealthy preaching and help, push our dominion into enemy lands, ahead of our forces if we're doing like some sort of purgatory push. So we may still do that. Probably once it gets like later in the game, we'll turn off the gold production a bit because the knights, I think, are going to drop off somewhat. I think the lack of magic resistance on the bless is a big hole that I didn't actually even realize was there, and just wasn't aware enough of that when setting up this build. So I do think we are going to hit a point in the game, sadly, where like the knights are not going to be super useful because people are just going to be like master enslaving them and things like that, and we don't really want to be giving people a bunch of Knights of the Chalice. So at some point they will drop off, but hoping to get like another 30 turns maybe out of them. I don't know. We'll see. Asphodel they're not an astral power at all, although I expect, he will have been recruiting some foreign mages. Although that is one problem for Asphodel, right? Because even if he has his build set up to deal with gold problems, in the later game, the independent mages are kind of always gold based, so will always be a bit of a struggle for him. So anyway, all this to say that turning fire gems into gold, probably not optimal. There are other things that can be done with them, but we are going to continue doing it. But this turn, we're going to take a break and we're going to cast Streams from Hades. So this will get us a Kokithiad, which is a Water 3 and Death 3, and those are like both useful paths for us that we don't really have too much of, although luckily, we get really lucky with this Death 4 here. That's super nice. So we're kind of not set on Death, because again, we just don't have very many of these mages, so another one would be nice. And this is taking up water gems, which we currently don't have a huge use for just yet. We also don't have a big income of it, but we also, part of the reason we don't have a big income of it is we don't really have any water mages, right? We have our Pretender, and I think there's like one, Enchantress that has some water. And the Enchantresses will start to break us more into water, but, wouldn't hurt to accelerate that process. And again, we don't have a lot of death casters, and Kokithiads are just good casters. So I think that is totally worth it, and I think that more or less covers it. We kind of already talked the situation research-wise, going for that construction 8, similar to all that we just talked about. You can see it's going to be a second, not too long. We'll actually have it roughly by the time our war starts with Phlegra if all goes to plan. So I think that covers turn 51.